Ever get that feeling? Like when you're stuck late at work and just end up scrolling on your phone? Or just like avoiding something you really don't want to deal with?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Well, that's what we're diving into today.
Okay, cool.
We're looking at The Subtle Art of Doing What Matters by Dr. Stephen C. Hayes.
Right.
He basically says that we always try to avoid pain,
Makes sense.
but sometimes to really do what matters, you gotta embrace a little discomfort.
Yeah, that is interesting for sure. It's kind of counterintuitive, right?
Totally. Like he talks about when we're in a crisis, we just want the pain to stop. Like remember when you had to give that big presentation?
Oh, yeah.
All you could think about was just getting through it.
Right.
And he uses all these examples like drowning your feelings, or losing yourself in work.
Yeah.
It's like we go numb.
Exactly. It's like a coping mechanism, I think.
Right.
Totally natural. But the problem is when you're only focused on getting rid of pain, you kind of lose sight of what really matters.
So it's like you're putting out fires and you forget to like tend to the garden.
Uh-huh. Yeah, that's a good way to put it. We're so busy trying to get rid of the negative that we forget about the positive.
Yeah.
And here's the thing, the things that really give our lives, meaning, the stuff we actually care about, those usually take effort and struggle.
Yeah.
And even like setbacks and pain.
That's the paradox, right?
Yeah.
That purpose-pain
So,
paradox.
like the more we care about something, the more it can hurt us.
Right.
Like, think about it. Starting a business or writing a book or even falling in love. I mean, all that stuff comes with the risk of failure,
Yeah.
heartbreak, or just discomfort in general. It makes us vulnerable.
And that vulnerability is what we try to avoid, right?
Yeah, it's like we're trying to protect ourselves by not doing anything.
By staying small.
Right. But by doing that, we might actually be missing out on the best stuff.
The things that could really make us happy.
Exactly.
So how do we get out of that cycle?
But the excerpt talks about using our values like a compass.
Okay, but how do you even figure out what your values are?
Yeah, that could be hard. And a lot of people think they have to be these big, huge, important things.
Right.
But it can be way simpler than that.
So you don't need to have it all figured out.
Not at all. The good thing is values aren't like goals.
Okay.
Like a goal, you finish it, but values are always there.
So they're more like a direction.
Exactly. Like a direction you're always moving in, not a destination.
Oh, okay, I see. It's not about doing a specific thing, but how you want to live your life.
Exactly. How you show up even when things get tough.
Gotcha. So it's like having a North Star to follow.
Yeah, exactly. And the best part is it can change over time.
Oh, okay.
Like what matters to you now might change as you grow.
Right.
But what's important is that you care about something.
Okay, that makes sense. So let's say you found some values you connect with.
Right.
What then? How do you actually use them?
That's the real challenge. Choosing them is only the first step.
Yeah.
You got to actually live them. That's where it gets interesting. And the excerpt talks about doing that in ways big and small.
So it's not about making these huge changes all at once.
Nope. It's the little choices you make all the time.
That add up over time.
Yeah, exactly. And those little choices can actually change your whole life.
Wow, that's amazing.
It really is. So last time we were talking about how we try to avoid uncomfortable stuff, right?
Yeah.
And how maybe embracing that discomfort could actually be a good thing.
Right.
And then there's the whole thing about values being like a compass.
Exactly. And you were saying how those values can change as we grow.
Mm-hmm. So let's talk more about those values. The excerpt actually gives some examples to get us started,
Okay.
like courage and gratitude and growth.
Right. But it's not about just copying those.
No. It's about figuring out what works for you. Like think of it like a menu at a restaurant.
Okay.
Pick what you like.
What if I don't even know what I'm hungry for? How do I even know what my values are?
That's a great question. A lot of people ask that. One thing you can try is thinking about times you felt really good.
Like when I was actually happy.
Exactly. Like when you felt most yourself.
Yeah.
Or like you had a purpose.
Yeah, okay.
And then think about what you were doing. Who were you with? What was important to you then?
So basically look back at those happy times and try to figure out what values were there.
Yeah, exactly. Kind of like you're going back in time to figure it out.
Haha. I like that. So it's like looking for clues in my own life to figure out my values.
That's a great way to think about it. And remember, the list in the excerpt is just a starting point.
Okay.
You can change it up, make it your own. The important thing is that it feels real to you.
Gotcha. So let's say I've thought about it and I've got some values I like. What's next?
Well, then comes the hard part, actually using them. Choosing them is one thing, but living them is different.
Right? How do I actually do that?
Well, the excerpt talks about using your values in both big ways and small ways.
Can you give me an example?
Sure. Imagine you're at work in a meeting and someone says something you totally disagree with.
Oh,
But to say something, you'd have to go against everyone else. Maybe even risk your job.
that's a tough one.
It is.
Mm.
So in that moment, what would it look like to act with courage?
Hmm. I guess it would mean speaking up even if I'm scared.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You might be nervous, but you still share your thoughts.
And maybe offer a different way of looking at it.
Yeah. Even if it's not what everyone wants to hear, you might even have to stand alone.
Wow. That's a really good example. It shows how living your values can be hard.
Yeah, sometimes it is, but it can also feel really good.
Right. So it's not always about big moments like that.
Not at all.
Oh.
Courage can be about smaller things, too, like saying no to something you don't want to do.
Or standing up for something you believe in.
Exactly, even if it's a small thing.
Okay, I see. It's all about making those choices that reflect what really matters to you.
Yeah, and those choices can make even boring stuff feel more meaningful.
Cool. So we talked about courage. What about gratitude? How do I put that into action?
Well, gratitude's all about appreciating things, right?
Yeah.
So maybe you take a few minutes every day to think about the good things in your life,
Okay.
or you write a thank you note to someone who helped you out, or just enjoy a good meal.
I'm so busy most of the time I forget to just appreciate things.
Yeah, it's easy to do that.
Mhm.
But gratitude can help you slow down and enjoy what's happening right now.
That makes sense. What about growth? Like, how do you live that value?
Well, growth is all about learning and getting better, right?
Mhm.
So maybe you try something new,
Okay.
learn a new skill, or do something that scares you a little.
Like take a class or start a new hobby.
Exactly. Or even just talk to someone who sees things differently than you do.
So it's about pushing myself even if it's scary.
In a way, yeah. And remembering that growing is a process. It never really ends.
I like that. It's like that quote, life begins at the end of your comfort zone.
Uh-huh, yeah. It's
Yeah.
true. And living our values might mean getting uncomfortable sometimes.
Yeah. So we're back to that paradox. The things that make us uncomfortable can also help us grow.
Exactly.
Okay.
And values can give us the strength to face those challenges and to create a life that feels real and
No.
important.
This is awesome. I'm really starting to get how important values are.
Me too. And remember in the excerpt, you mentioned another resource that might be helpful.
Oh, yeah. What was it again?
It's a guide from the World Health Organization.
Okay.
It's called Doing What Matters in Times of Stress. And it's all about using these ideas in real life.
Awesome. I love how it's a guide, too. Makes it easier to understand.
Yeah, sometimes you need more than just words. And I think this guide could really help us understand all this stuff even better.
Welcome back. So in the last couple parts, we've been talking about how avoiding uncomfortable stuff can actually hold us back,
Yeah.
and how using our values can be like a compass to guide us.
Right. And remember, Dr. Hayes mentioned that other resource. We're going to dive into that today.
Oh, yeah, that's right. What was it again?
It's that guide from the World Health Organization called Doing What Matters in Times of Stress.
Mm.
It's actually based on something called acceptance and commitment therapy, or ACT. And fun fact, Dr. Hayes helped develop that therapy.
Wow. So it all comes full circle. So what's this guide all about? What can we learn from it?
Well, one of the main things is learning to accept your feelings without letting them control you.
Okay.
Remember how we talked about wanting to avoid tough stuff?
Yeah.
This guide helps you realize those feelings are totally normal.
Mm-hmm.
And instead of fighting them, you learn to make space for them.
So kind of like what we were talking about with Dr. Hayes, instead of running away, you just acknowledge it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And by doing that, you can still go after the things that are important to you, the stuff that matches your values.
Right.
And the guide actually gives you steps on how to do that.
That's awesome. Because remember how we were saying it can be hard to even figure out your values?
Yeah,
And then actually using them can feel even harder.
definitely. But this guide gets that.
Yeah.
It knows life can be tough, and we all have tough emotions.
Right.
It's not about pretending everything's perfect. It's about being flexible so you can still focus on what matters even when things are hard.
So it's like we're building a toolbox to handle all the ups and downs.
Exactly. And this toolbox has stuff like mindfulness exercises and ways to deal with tough emotions and how to set goals that actually match what you care about.
Cool.
It's all about understanding your thoughts and feelings without letting them take over.
Thinking back to that example you gave about speaking up at work, even when it's scary,
Mm-hmm.
I think this guide could really help with that. Having the courage to do what you think is right, even when you're not sure.
For sure. It's about knowing that discomfort is just part of life, and it doesn't have to stop you from doing what you want to do.
This is really interesting. So it's not about being happy all the time, but about having a purpose, even if it means getting uncomfortable.
Exactly. And I think that's a great thing to remember. This whole deep dive has given us a lot to think about, right?
Definitely.
We talked about how avoiding uncomfortable stuff can stop us from growing, and how our values can be like a guide,
Mm-hmm.
and how we can learn to handle life's challenges in a better way.
It's crazy how much we've learned from just one excerpt.
I know, right? And there's always more to learn, both about ourselves and the world.
So true. So before we go, any last thoughts?
Yeah, I'd say keep exploring. This journey of figuring yourself out and growing never really ends.
Right.
What matters is that you keep learning, keep growing, and keep trying to live a life that reflects what you care about.
That's great advice. I want to leave everyone with one question. What's one small thing you can do today to act on one of your values? It doesn't have to be big.
Yeah.
Maybe tell someone you're grateful for them, or do something you enjoy, or just try to be more present.
Even small things can make a difference. When they match your values, they can really change things for the better.
I love that. Well, that's all the time we have for this deep dive. Thanks for joining us as we explored the subtle art of doing what matters. Keep learning, keep diving deep, and most importantly, keep doing what matters. See you next time.